Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you finally my October reading wrap up. I'm a little bit delayed in getting this to you, but I have been really struggling with fatigue, which has just made things like filming a little bit more difficult because I need to have energy to do it, and I haven't had energy. But today we have had what my friend Angela from Literature Science Alliance called the holy trifecta. I have time to film, I have energy to film, and my hair is looking nice, so I thought I better do some filming. And so I'm going to talk you through my reading stats for October and hopefully tell you a bit about my favourite and least favourite things I read. I read quite a lot of library books and or ebooks. I think, in fact, entirely those things. And so most of the books I don't have physical copies to hold up for you, so I'll be putting pictures up for those. So without further ado, let's get into these stats. So I read a total of 8 books in October from 8 different authors, but one was an anthology of multiple authors. So lots of different authors, which is good, like that. The longest book that I read was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which was 433 pages. And the shortest book that I read was, I actually have this one, Yesterday by Juan Emar, which was 144 pages. The total number of pages of the books that I finished in October came to 2,541, which is about the same as the previous month actually, and a little bit lower than other months this year, but it's still not too bad. And so that gave me an average book length of 318 pages. All of the books I read were under 500 pages, which meant I earned £1 each for each of those books. I'm not going to tell you exactly which books I bought in October because you have probably seen, if not, I will link it in the description box for you, my summer/birthday book haul, which included a few things that I bought in October as well. But I will tell you now that the amount that I spent on books in October came to £7.95 and I earned £8, so that's not too bad. I was already in debt though to myself. I mean, it's only to myself. At the start of the month I was on minus £9.25, and so at the end of October I was on minus £9.20. At least it's going in the right direction, right? I mean, that's all we can hope for, really, isn't it? Yeah, and I've already bought a few things in November. It was one that I actually ordered in October, but it didn't arrive until November, so that counts on the November accounts, and it wasn't massively expensive, but I need to do some more reading in November still to try and recoup some of that money, but never mind. Once we get into December, I won't be buying books anyway. We have a ban on buying basically anything the closer it gets to birthdays or Christmas. So hopefully that will give me an opportunity to get my budget back into a bit of a healthier state, particularly as I'm planning to do lots of reading. I have a bit of time off over Christmas, and also the next phase of my research project requires me to read a lot of romance novels. Yeah, and they're quite quick to read, so hopefully that will help boost my budget a little bit if I can get through some of them. At the start of the month there were 637 books on my physical Goodreads TBR. This did go up slightly because of the books I bought and because I didn't read very much from my backlist. So it had gone up by the end of the month to 642. So this is another thing I need to work on. Having said that, I have a lot of books out from the library at the moment. While hopefully that won't go up too much before the end of the year, I also don't foresee it going down massively because I'm not going to be actively reading books from my physical TBR. I'm also starting to think about next year and some of my reading goals, and I think it's probably bad that because I don't put ebooks on Goodreads until I read them, I'm not including the number of ebooks in this stat yet. So I'm going to try and figure out a way of doing that next year so it's a more accurate report. The book that was published first was called Faith and Fiction by Anita Gandolfo, and this is a book that I'm reading for my research. So this is a background to literature and religion in America and the relationship between them, because the focus of my research is evangelical romance fiction from America. So that was a really helpful book. I read 2 books that came out in 2021. I gave 2 books 3 stars, 3 books 4 stars, and 3 books 5 stars, so that's a fairly successful reading month really. I'm quite happy with that. The book that took me the longest time to read was Faith and Fiction, because I started reading it when I was writing my research proposal back in the spring, and then had been slowly working through it, so it was good to finally finish that one. And then the book that I read the quickest was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, because I inhaled that book. I loved it so much. So I read it really, really quickly. That gave me an average reading length of 40 days, which is a little bit longer than I would usually like. I usually like that to be less than a month, but I mean that's just due to the length of time that that book had been on my currently reading shelf, because I had to put it down while I was working on other assignments last year. The book that had been on my TBR the longest was called Seasons Between Us, which was an anthology edited by Susan Forrest and Lukas K. Law, a short story collection, and there was some poetry in there as well. So that was one I had from NetGalley. It was one of the first things I was approved for on NetGalley. It had been on there for 258 days on my TBR. Then there were a couple of books that I had from the library that I started reading pretty much as soon as I got them out. So that gave me an average length on my TBR of 74 days, which is actually really good. I usually like that number to be under a year, but because I wasn't actively reading much from my physical backlist, or my digital backlist for that matter, all of those books have been on my TBR less than a year. While it's good to have an average that low for this statistic, it's also not good that I have not been reading things from my physical TBR. But never mind, there'll be time for that, I'm sure. 4 of the books were on my October TBR that I filmed, and 4 of them weren't. So where the books came from: 1 book was new, which I acquired this year, 4 books came from the library, 1 I borrowed from a friend, and 2 were review books. 1 was from NetGalley and 1 was for a book tour. In terms of format, 4 books were paperback, 1 was hardback, and 3 were ebooks. And then I read quite a range of genres really. Everything was from a different genre. So there was 1 anthology, 1 Christian nonfiction, 1 fantasy, 1 historical fiction, 1 magical realism, 1 mystery, 1 nonfiction, and 1 science fiction. 1 book was for a younger adult audience and the rest were for an adult audience. And then it was a bit of a range of publishers as well. So it ended up being 2 books were from the big 5 publishers, and then 6 books were from independent publishers or self-published, which is really good. My stats for reading indie books this year, usually I expect it to be slightly under half. This year it is, well, yeah, it's slightly over half. It's 56% of the books from independent publishers or self-published books, which is really good. Read a range of author nationalities. 1 African American, 2 American, 1 British, 1 Chilean author, 1 Irish Nigerian author, 1 Korean American, and 1 book from multiple authors of different nationalities. I read a really good range of ethnicities this month as well. So it worked out that 3 books were from white authors and the rest, the other 5, were all written by or featuring authors of colours. So authors from marginalised ethnicities, which is good. So that's over half, which I think was the first month this year that I managed that. I've been actively focusing on reading from more authors of colour in the second half of the year because I realised I wasn't going to hit my target of over 40%, and I think I'm pretty close to that target now for the year. Yeah, including the books of multiple authors, which I only put them down as multiple authors for the ethnicity stat if it's got authors other than white authors. So that takes me up to 41%, which is good, but I still need to focus on that and try and improve that and read more from authors of colour. For author genders, 2 of the authors were cisgendered men, 4 were cisgendered women. 1 book was from multiple authors of different genders, including some transgendered authors, and then 1 book was from a trans male author. For my challenges, I did okay-ish. 1 book was translated, 2 books were for review, and 1 book counted towards Read Around the World, which was the author was from Chile. For author diversity, as I mentioned, 5 books were from authors from marginalised ethnicities, 2 books were from authors from the LGBTQIA+ community, and then I think these last 3 actually all were from the anthology, which was multiple authors. It included authors with disabilities, authors who have talked about mental illness, and authors who are neurodiverse. That's one of the reasons why I love reading anthologies, because they bring you so many new voices that you wouldn't come across otherwise. And so I really do love, particularly when I get e-arcs on NetGalley for anthologies. I've got another one actually at the moment, not from NetGalley, which I'm really enjoying. And then for character diversity, I hit all of those markers as well. So marginalised ethnicity, LGBTQIA+, disability, mental health and neurodivergence. Covered them all in more than one book and some in multiple books. So that is all of my stats for October. So now onto my favourite and least favourite books. I mean, I gave 2 books 3 stars. One I enjoyed slightly more than the other. So the book that I'd probably say was my least favourite was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I picked this up partly because I read Circe a couple of years ago and really quite enjoyed it. I think I gave that one 4 stars. The other reason being because of the research I'm doing, which is looking specifically at evangelical romance fiction set in ancient Israel. I've been trying to find other books set in the ancient world that kind of fit into the romance genre, and it's very difficult because there wasn't really a lot of romance in that time. It wasn't a thing the way it is today, and it only seems to be Christian authors that are really trying very hard to make it a thing. Spoiler alert, that's going to be featuring in my research. A couple of people recommended Song of Achilles to me. I would say it's probably more literary fiction than romance because it kind of has a happy ending, but it depends how you determine what a happy ending is, I guess. Hopefully that's not too much of a spoiler. It's the retelling of some of the story of the Iliad, told from the point of view of Patroclus, who was, I'm not sure exactly what he was in the Iliad, but he's an associate of Achilles, who is the champion of the Greek army. And in this book, he is his lover. There's a romance between them. And I enjoyed Patroclus as a character, I enjoyed his narrative, and I liked the way the story was told. I just got a bit fed up towards the end. My friend asked, when I was visiting my parents, I also met up a few times with one of my friends who lives there, and she asked me if I was enjoying it, and I was about maybe 50 pages from the end, and I think I said to her that I was just getting a bit fed up of all the willy-wanging that was going on at that point in the book. Just soldiers, men, and their pride and not wanting to apologise to each other or admit that they might have been wrong, and then loads of people dying because of it just was getting to me a little bit by the end. Yeah, that just tipped it down. Up until the last maybe 100 pages, it was on course for a 4-star rating, but yeah, I just got a bit fed up by the end. Yeah, I've got another book out from the library at the moment that I'm hopefully reading soon, which is another retelling of the same story, The Siege of Troy. I'm not sure what perspective it's from, but I'm going to give that one a go. But if you've got any recommendations of particularly romance novels set in the ancient world, kind of anything from Roman times backwards, do let me know because I would like to read it. Yeah, so I gave that one 3 stars. It was only marginally not as good as some of the other stuff that I read. The other book that I gave 3 stars was one of the books I was reading to review, and I really enjoyed the story of it. It was called Mauto by Kuda di Gutu, and it just needed a bit of a tighter edit, I felt, to iron out some of the issues with the way the story was presented, particularly in terms of the pacing and the chronology, and it would have easily been a 4-star read. So that's why Song of Achilles just was slightly not as enjoyable for me. And then for my favourite book, it's really hard to pick because there were 3 books that I really, really did love. Honourable mention to Seasons Between Us, which was an anthology that I gave 5 stars. Really rare to give a short story anthology 5 stars, but I enjoyed every single story in that book. And that is super rare. Obviously, there are a couple that I didn't enjoy quite as much as the others, but to have a short story collection where there are no misses, where I enjoyed everything and they all stayed with me. Really, really impressive. So well done to all those authors. I will be doing a review of that soon, probably paired with the anthology that I'm currently reading because they have a lot of similar themes. So look out for that in the next couple of months. And then it's between Ninefox Gambit by Yoon Lee and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson as to which was my favourite. And I can't pick between them, to be honest. They were both excellent and I really loved both of them for very different reasons. Ninefox Gambit is science fiction fiction, it's slightly strange science fiction. Yeah, it just was really mind-blowing. I thought it was really well put together. I really liked the characters, I really liked the way the story was told. I immediately requested the second book from the library, which just shows how much I enjoyed it and want to carry on with that series, and I'm going to be getting to that one really soon. So I really loved that. Similarly, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder's contemporary YA mystery book. My friend lent it to me. The Space Sirens all love it and were really hyped when I said I was reading it. I read it in 2 days because I just could not put it down. I would have stayed up all night reading it if I hadn't had to drive really far the day after I started it. Yeah, I really loved it. I thought it was really cleverly written. Again, I've already borrowed the next book from the friend that lent me the first one so that I can read it really soon. Both of those books are from trilogies, and they're both trilogies that I'm really excited to carry on and get to the end of. Although they were very different books and I enjoyed them for very different reasons, it's very hard for me to pick a favourite out of the two of them. So I'm just going to say both. I think that's it for today. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or let me know if you're interested in reading any of them. Let me know what your favourite book in October was, if you can remember that far back, or just let me know some of what you've been reading recently. Or if you just want to let me know that you've been here, you can leave me a dinosaur emoji because I've got my favourite dinosaur jumper on today. You can also like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me, and you can also follow me on my social media. All that information is listed for you in the description box below. But that's it for today, so thank you so much for watching and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!